There is a specific moment when your entire world collapses. It's that quiet 2 a.m. darkness where you sit on the floor, staring at the wall, completely emptied out. You feel like a glass vase that dropped onto concrete, smashed into 1,000 jagged pieces. Society tells you that after a moment like that, you are forever broken. They expect you to carry those scars like an apology for existing. But some people sit in that wreckage and do something that looks almost terrifying to the outside world. They don't try to sweep the broken glass under the rug. They pick up the sharpest piece and use it to cut away everything that was holding them back.
In psychology, we spent decades treating trauma as a permanent deficit. We focused entirely on post-traumatic stress disorder, assuming that severe pain only leaves people diminished. Then, in the mid-1990s, psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun discovered something that changed human psychology forever. They called it post-traumatic growth.
Resilience is simply bouncing back to where you were before the crisis hit. Post-traumatic growth is different. It is the phenomenon where the struggle itself acts as a catalyst to push you far past your original baseline. Your old psychological house was destroyed. Instead of rebuilding the exact same fragile structure, you construct a fortress.
Think about Viktor Frankl, standing in the freezing darkness of a concentration camp, stripped of his name, his family, and his dignity. Most people around him surrendered to the despair. Yet Frankl observed a tiny minority who looked at the nightmare and found a reason to endure. He realized that when you lose everything, the last human freedom remains, the ability to choose your attitude. Maybe you've experienced your own version of that darkness, a betrayal that shattered your trust, or loss that rewrote your entire life plan. When you hit that floor, you realize you have nothing left to lose. And that realization carries a strange, quiet kind of power.
When you experience severe adversity, your brain undergoes a process called neuroplasticity. Your amygdala, the threat detector, initially goes into overdrive, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. But when you face that stress repeatedly without giving up, your prefrontal cortex steps in to regulate the alarm. This is known as stress habituation. Your neural pathways physically rewire to process chaos with remarkable efficiency. What used to feel like a catastrophic panic attack becomes manageable data.
You are not immune to pressure. Your baseline for what constitutes a crisis has simply shifted. Your nervous system stops viewing discomfort as a fatal threat and starts treating it as leverage.
Now, before we call this a superpower, let's be brutally honest with ourselves. There is a massive difference between genuine strength and emotional numbness. A lot of people think they've turned their pain into power, but they've actually just built a high wall. They stopped trusting people. They stopped letting anyone get close because staying cold feels safer than getting burned again. That isn't strength. That's hiding behind an iron shield and calling it freedom. Real growth doesn't mean your heart turns to stone. It means your heart expands wide enough to carry the pain without letting it harden you.
When a major life crisis strikes, it shatters what psychologists call your assumptive world. You used to believe life was fair, people were safe, and the future was predictable. Psychologist Robert Diemeyer calls the process of healing meaning reconstruction.
It is the deliberate cognitive effort to make sense of the rupture and rebuild your mental model of reality. People who transform pain don't pretend the bad thing was a good thing. They don't use toxic positivity to gloss over the damage. Instead, they actively assign a purpose to the suffering, shifting from "why did this happen to me" to "what does this demand of me?" The event remains painful, but it ceases to be meaningless.
Your past is no longer a sentence you have to serve. It is the raw material you use to build a life most people will never have the depth to understand. The scars you carry aren't marks of disgrace or evidence that you were broken. They are physical proof that something tried to destroy you, and it failed. You didn't survive everything you went through just to spend the rest of your life living small and apologizing for your space. You survived so you could become the person you needed when you were at your lowest. So let them look at you and wonder how you're still standing. You're not just standing, you're building.
You can watch the rest of this ongoing series right now over on our channel.
Click the next video on your screen to keep exploring.